July turned out to be quite a big month for movies, so today I'm going to stop and rank all 9 July new releases that I saw from the worst to the best. Hi, my name is Sean, and I love to talk about movies and TV way too much. With that in mind, go ahead and join me down below in the comment section. Share your ranking of all the July new releases that you saw. My list isn't the right list, it's just my list, and I would love to see yours. With that said, let's get started. Coming in last place, The Outlaws, a comedy with absolutely no excuses for how lame it is. The basic premise here is that a guy wants to marry a girl, and he discovers that his future in-laws are in fact bank robbers and gets sucked into their world. There have been movies like this before, but it's also a fairly safe setup for a lot of fun shenanigans. And with the cast that they have and a fun but familiar premise like this, it should be pretty easy to make a good enough, decent enough, even, mediocre comedy. But somehow, they even missed that mark. Do I look cool?
Yeah, you look like James Bond.
Which one?
5.
Well, that was a good one.
It just hops around from like crass joke without any wit, where the punchline is just saying something shockingly sexual, to crass joke where none of them really land, none of them are funny, none of them are clever. It's just base level shock humor in a movie where that doesn't really even fit with the story being told or anything like that. Like, there's a whole section where kind of this straight-laced mother casually is talking about how she was involved in orgies back in the day while her husband was sitting out in the car. And I guess the joke is supposed to be that this lady that seems so totally normal was involved in all sorts of wild and crazy stuff. But that's the extent of the wit here. That's it. There's nothing else to it. There's no memorable characters that you like. Nothing pops out. And when you've got Pierce Brosnan, there's no reason. There's no excuse for giving a movie with so little to offer. It's hard to imagine a movie with this premise and this cast being any worse. This is the worst possible version of this movie they could have made with the resources at their disposal. So easily in last place. Coming in at number 8, Insidious The Red Door, a highly disappointing continuation of the Insidious franchise. This movie goes back to the family of the first 2 movies and sees where they're at about 10 years later. And inside of that, there's some interesting ideas of looking at how the trauma and the deceptions from the first 2 movies would affect this family all these years later. That's kind of an interesting idea. The actual execution, the story they chose to tell with that really lets you down, primarily because the drive of the story is the mystery of what's going on with this father and son. Why are they experiencing what they've been experiencing? Why are they torn apart? But the audience already has answers to all of those questions. So the whole movie is these big twists, turns, and reveals that are essentially just showing the audience scenes from the first 2 movies, in particular the second movie. So it's just rehashing what we already saw. And you don't really even dive deep into the further or this mythology or push anything forward until the last 10 or 15 minutes. So it just feels like a wasted opportunity where they had ideas where to go with the family. Like, oh, this is what that would look like. But they didn't have anything else beyond that. In which case the movie lets you down. It was really disappointing because it was directed by Patrick Wilson, the star of the franchise. I was rooting for him. He wasn't the problem here. They just didn't have a story worth telling. Next up, Barbie, the event movie of the summer. This movie has just been destroying expectations. It's already made over $500 million. It's extremely likely to cross the $1 billion mark. And all week long, I was going to press screenings on Tuesday, Wednesday night, and the lobby was just filled with grown women dressed up in full-blown Barbie cosplay. This is truly a cultural phenomenon that everyone wants to go see it, whether they love it, they hate it, they want to be a part of the conversation, they want to experience what everyone else is experiencing. And as for me, I really appreciated a bunch of aspects of the film, but on the whole, it didn't work for me. Certain segments were really funny. It has some great laughs in it. The production design of bringing Barbie Land to life, very cool. The perfect aesthetic for what they were going for. The performances from pretty much everyone, but of course, in particular, Margot Robbie and Ryan Gosling.
No, I won't let you do just one appendectomy.
But I'm a man.
But not a doctor.
Can I talk to a doctor?
You are talking to a doctor.
Great, fantastic, so much fun. Where the movie lost me was in the handling of the messaging, where by the time it's trying to tackle so many different ideas about modern gender issues and consumerism that we get into the last third of the movie and it just has to start monologuing. And there's like full-blown speeches being given to people to get all the points across. And anytime that a movie does that, I don't like it. You're supposed to show your movie, communicate your ideas through story, not have characters pause and just say everything that the director and writers are thinking. And that's what this movie does to get all of its ideas across. It's also very scattershot because it's trying to tackle so many different ideas, in which case there's a bunch of characters that just feel like they're along for the ride to make some quick observation or point, but there's no depth or exploration of what was going on there. That's really everyone feels a little bit shallow in the treatment of so many different ideas that it feels like we missed an opportunity there. And I simply don't understand the fact that they would make this movie so inaccessible to younger audiences. It's overtly written for grown-ups, and the vocabulary used, the way that it handles both the humor as well as its messaging. It's based off prior knowledge. It assumes the audience knows things and is in touch with pop culture and a bunch of other stuff to track along with the humor and the messaging of it. And I have no clue why you would do that. If you want to communicate your message to people, including girls who are currently playing with Barbies and want to get the right idea from Barbies, why would you not package that for little girls rather than grown women? So a movie that I think had a lot of potential. I just don't understand why they tried to tackle so much and why they tackled it the way that they did. Number 6, Haunted Mansion. Point of reference, I've never seen the 2003 film, and if I've been on the actual Disney attraction, it was 30 years ago. So I was essentially just going into this as a father taking his son to go see a spooky movie. And it's a film that just kind of falls like right into that mediocre middle where it doesn't do anything that overtly bothered me. Didn't make any gigantic mistakes that made me mad, but it wasn't particularly great or memorable at any one thing. It's a little bit spooky, but it's never really scary. So you get ghosts and stuff, but nothing actually scary about it. Even my 11-year-old was like, oh, it's not scary at all. It's kind of funny. There are some good laughs in there. And they're sprinkled all throughout the film, so you definitely get some laughs.
Smiling like, yeah, like that.
This kind of thing.
Exactly.
Is this the man who mugged you?
You have some times when there's some cool stuff, visuals, how they visualize the ghost stuff and the mansion morphing and transitions between shots. There's some things that do that, but not that many, and they're not that cool. And it's a little bit heartfelt and emotional when you get into the backstory of a couple of our lead characters. But it's not like a fantastic character study. It's not like these are memorable characters that you're going to be talking about a year from now. It just has a little bit of heart. So it's got a little bit of everything, but it's not great at any one thing. Doesn't stand out on any particular experience. And so it's kind of in that mediocre middle phase. For me, though, I look at this film as a family movie, and therefore I evaluate it with my dad hat on and very much factor in what was the experience of me as a dad taking my son to go see the movie. How did he feel coming out of the film? And as a dad, would I be cool to take the rest of my family to go see it and have a fun, kind of spooky, kind of funny, kind of heartfelt time at the movies? And yes, I would. So despite the fact that it's not a movie that I rush towards or would be praising, I think it is effective as a family movie that you can feel safe taking the whole family to and experiencing together and having a good enough time. In fifth place, The Beanie Bubble. Now, this is an Apple TV Plus original movie that came out this weekend. And the reason this one was on my radar is that my wife and her family were a part of the Beanie Baby craze back in the 90s. I had nothing to do with it. I didn't buy any Beanie Babies. I had my own stuff that I collected and still have in my garage that's probably not as worth as much as it was when I first bought it. But her family were really into Beanie Babies. So as soon as I saw this movie was coming out, I was like, oh, I got to watch that one with my wife. And even as we were watching it, we kept pausing it and she would tell me anecdotes about how the story connected with actual experiences that they had back in the 90s. So as someone that is married to someone that was a part of the Beanie Baby craze and actually suffered some consequences tied to the bubble bursting, this was a fun watch in that context and enjoyable enough just as a film in and of itself. Apparently 2023 is the movie or the year of movies about the creation of products, Air, BlackBerry, Flaming Hot, the Cheetos story, and a bunch of other movies doing this. And of course, now we have the one about Beanie Babies. So when it comes to the movie itself, it essentially tracks kind of two different timelines, one in the 80s and one in the 90s, about the creator of Beanie Babies, the CEO of the company, played by Zach Galifianakis, who is basically is unrecognizable just because he shaved his beard. He looks like a totally different guy because of that. It's fun to see him playing something that still has his energy.
I only want to speak to Oprah Winfrey. Has she reached out?
But doesn't just feel like he's rehashing what he did in The Hangover. So I really enjoyed him in this movie, but it's tracking kind of his pre-Beanie Baby days and kind of how he treated this one lady in a relationship back in the 80s that was a business partner played by Elizabeth Banks. And then in the 90s, you're tracking the rise of the Beanie Babies themselves and a relationship that he's in with a woman there, as well as someone who's working in the office that is a big part of the success, but he never really gives her the credit that she's worth. And it's very much about how he kind of treats women and how he loves them and values them, but how he's this completely delusional person that doesn't know how to, he's so narcissistic and selfish that he doesn't know how to properly interact with anyone. And it makes for a very interesting watch as you're seeing this kind of wild craze from the very early days of the internet. Beanie Babies were one of the first internet crazes, one of the first things that exploded on eBay. And it's kind of tracking the history of all of that. And you see how it basically happened despite the incompetence of the guy running the company, that he was kind of out there in left field, but these other people around him had just the right ideas at the right time. And even some of the reasons it imploded is probably because he ignored a bunch of signs. The problem with the film is that the subject matter is more interesting than perhaps the way the story's told, or it feels a little bit too superficial. Like it's having fun at his expense. Like, wow, he's delusional. He's wacky. He's crazy. But it doesn't get into why he's that way. And so it just kind of touches on a lot of things, and you kind of want it to go a little bit deeper. It absolutely kept me interested. In particular, it helped that I had a wife that could like, oh yeah, this sort of thing happened. Oh yeah, we did this and we had this on layaway and we did this. And it helped being in that context with someone that was so like deep in the world of Beanie Babies. But the movie itself, you just kind of wish it went deeper for it to kind of get to those higher levels of, you know, on a ranking like this or greatness. In fourth place, Sound of Freedom, a movie that out of nowhere is just selling tickets like crazy and is just surrounded by scandals, controversy, people overreacting on both sides. And at its core is a movie it's pretty effective at what it's trying to do. So it tells the real life story of a man that started an organization to try and catch child traffickers and free children from child trafficking. And it tells the story in a manner that's not trying to be a power fantasy or turn it into an action movie. This is not Taken. It's nothing like that. It's much more grounded. Even the film itself shows footage from some of the actual raids that took place in the film. And because of the subject matter, it's highly effective. It draws out big emotions. It makes you disgusted at some of the evil that's in the world. And so for all of those reasons, it's very effective at what it's going for. On a just filmmaking level, there's some pacing issues. It probably should be a little bit shorter, and it never really has its storytelling rhythm down pat. So it feels a little bit like we're starting and stopping with the way that it kind of flows, but very good at delivering its message, evoking big emotions, and having a satisfying conclusion without turning into a ridiculous action movie. So that's the movie itself. And then there's all the other stuff, with one side proclaiming the movie it's just propaganda, throwing out conspiracy theories, and Jim Caviezel's a lunatic that believes crazy stuff. And if you watch this movie, it's because you're supporting conspiracy theories or you're naive. And on the other side, you have people, if you criticize this movie, if you don't go see it, if you don't criticize it, the pacing of the movie, it's because you're backing child traffickers. Like, these two reactions are way over the top. It's a movie that's against something we can all agree that we should be about. And if you watch the movie itself and judge it based off the film itself, what's there, it's not a propaganda movie. You can disagree heartedly with the associations of the producers, of Jim Caviezel, and things they've said elsewhere, sure. But saying the movie itself is propaganda, it just sounds like you haven't seen the movie, or you're just really looking for something that's not there. And at the same time, if everything's a conspiracy theory about people trying to shut the movie down, I think that's what's so strange to me. Both sides with this movie are just soaked in these world of conspiracy theories of just evaluate the movie for what it is. Stop getting so wound up in culture wars and take the film at it what it is. And I think we can all agree child trafficking bad. But no, this is the era of tribalism where you have to pick a side in a battle. And it is weird how much vitriol you're getting from these two sides surrounding this film. In third place, Talk to Me. This is the new A24 horror film, and the trailers sold the movie as just kind of another generic movie where young people find a doodad that they start screwing around with, and then ghosts start following them around. They start seeing things, and they try to figure out how to get rid of the doodad and free themselves from the ghosts. And on a story level, that's not actually terribly far off from what the movie is about. But if you know anything about A24 horror films, they are not generic Hollywood films. That's not what A24 goes for. And in fact, this is not a Hollywood movie at all. This is an Australian film that A24 picked up. And it just, from beginning to end, feels so different from generic Hollywood horror films. It's very Australian in the way that people talk to each other. And I don't mean that in this alienating sense. It's specific. It feels like people in a place that interact a certain way, that have slang that you can track along with what they're saying, but it feels like people in an actual place, not generically in a movie optimized to not alienate anyone. So it just feels like America. So many horror films just feel like that. They've taken any rough edges off of it. And this actually feels like it takes place in a place with a specific people. And the way they interact with each other just feels more human than so many other horror movies. And then even as the way the story plays out, it just does a really good job of getting under your skin and being unsettling. With the specific nature of the doodad, that it connects them with the other world and the deceptions tied to it, they give us a lead character that would have actual motivations, multiple motivations for why she keeps going back to this thing and what she's trying to get from it, how she's trying to use it to help people, the answers that she's seeking. You understand why she's being pulled into this world of deception and this dangerous game that she's playing. So much more so than generic Hollywood movies where it just feels like people are being stupid. This one starts off with teenagers being stupid in a way that teenagers do stupid things. But then it has a reason why she keeps doing that and why she keeps thinking maybe she can fix it and go further down that path. There's a lot of ways that the camera is used to, in clever ways to transition between shots, show kind of what's happening and the movement of the camera and different ways that it visualizes things. And so it takes what feels like a very familiar premise and makes a real smart version of it that is creepy. It's unsettling. It's clever as you move into the final moments and you feel like, okay, that makes sense with the way that it plays out and how it resolves things and the way it bookends the movie. So just a real solid horror movie that reminds you that not everything is a slick, generic Hollywood production. I was like right out of the gate watching the movie, and I keep going back to this, but saying that it feels very Australian, I think is one of the best compliments I can give this movie. That it just feels different, has a different vibe to it, and has specificity. Our runner-up, Oppenheimer. I'm a massive Christopher Nolan fan. Whatever he puts out, I am excited for. So this was naturally one of my most anticipated films of the year. And once again, Christopher Nolan delivered a compelling film that continues to show his versatility as a director and that he knows how to make compelling stories in all kinds of genres. And in the case of this movie, it's a 3-hour, very heady drama filled with Senate hearings and scientists in laboratories and in classrooms talking about bombs. And Christopher Nolan found a way to make all of that compelling. Now, it certainly helps that Nolan is able to attract exclusively top-tier talent who bring their A game. And, of course, Cillian Murphy in the lead is great. A big one people are talking about is Robert Downey Jr. showing us that he's not just Tony Stark, showing us that he's the guy that he was 30 years ago that got nominated for an Oscar for Chaplin. He brings his A game to this drama, but so does everyone else. Everyone delivers a compelling, captivating performance. Another interesting thing about this movie, while it's very heavy, this might be overstated, but I also felt like it might be the funniest Christopher Nolan film. Like, his movies aren't known for being funny, but I felt like this one just had a better pacing of just little amusing lines, a lot of them from Matt Damon. But there's just something in there to break the tension of, we're preparing for war, we're making a bomb, the Cold War's upon us. There's just enough of these little amusing lines, one every 10 minutes, that kind of break the tension. It not like it might be the funniest of Nolan's films. And it does a great job of tackling how this technology that was created was important and dramatic for its immediate effects of dropping these 2 bombs on Japan, but it also created a more dangerous world for all of us going forward. And I can't recall a time where I was ever watching a movie and it made me feel so in danger in the real world, the way that this movie made me feel in danger in the real world. And so it's compelling, it's interesting, it's a character study while also tackling big ideas about our technology and how we use it and the government and its excesses. So another triumph from Nolan. But coming in at number 1, Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1. And this is just a great summer blockbuster. Tom Cruise knows what his audiences want, and he knows how to deliver thrilling, exciting films. In the case of this movie, it's like 2 hours and 40 minutes long, but it is a very fast 2 hours and 40 minutes. Even the way it's structured, it has a pretty extended prologue setting up all the plot lines, and then you go to an airport, then you go to Rome, then you go to a nightclub, and then you're on the train. Like, it's structured to where you only really have these 5 sequences in the movie and like a scene transitioning between each of them. And it just makes it move so fast. It creates a scenario where it doesn't slow down where as one of these is ending, it's transitioning into the next one immediately, so the tension doesn't let up. It combines the fun of Ghost Protocol from 10 years ago with the big world building and connected universe of the last couple Christopher McQuarrie Mission Impossible films. So you kind of get the best of the franchise all kind of in this one film. And of course, you get these incredible practical action set pieces filled with big stunts. Whether we're fighting on the outside of a train, or Tom Cruise is jumping a motorcycle, or driving around in Rome, it's all entertaining, and it makes you feel like you're present in the moment. Like it's all thrilling because it's so believable, because you know that they really did this stuff, that Tom Cruise trained for a year to jump a motorcycle, that they put actors on top of a train, that Tom was driving this car a lot of the time. And it just makes for more thrilling experiences. And when you have the actors actually on a train, in the air, in the car, you can see their performances as wild, crazy things are happening. You're not seeing the back of a head. You're not seeing a CGI person. You're seeing an actor acting in this crazy, wild experience that just adds this groundedness to it. It feels real because a real thing is happening. So I thought it was another fantastic blockbuster from Tom Cruise, so it comes in at number 1. If you enjoyed this video, I've got more like it. You can check one of those videos out right over there. If you want my extended thoughts on most of these movies, I did full reviews for most of them. Also, let me know if I missed any July movies that you think that I would like, and let me know why you think I would like it, and keep talking movies and TV too much. Bye-bye.